The sound that shattered the polished silence of the corporate plaza was not a shout or a siren, but a sudden, broken yelp that cut through the laughter like glass. In a place built of steel, glass, and unchecked power, pain had just found a voice. A dog lay on the cold stone tiles, breath ragged, eyes wide with confusion, while an expensive shoe pressed down without hesitation. In that single, cruel moment, arrogance revealed its true weight, and fate quietly stepped closer. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that compassion still matters in a world that often forgets it, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. The plaza outside the towering glass headquarters was designed to intimidate. Everything about it spoke of success without mercy, sharp angles, reflective walls, and a constant parade of tailored suits moving with rehearsed confidence. This was the domain of Victor Hale, a man whose name was etched into business magazines and whispered in boardrooms with equal parts admiration and fear. He had built an empire by crushing hesitation, rewarding obedience, and never once looking down, until that day, when he literally did. Victor strode forward surrounded by executives and assistants, laughter echoing as someone clapped at a joke meant to impress him. Cameras were out, phones raised, capturing a moment that would later be spun into a story of leadership and charisma. None of them noticed the German shepherd lying quietly near the edge of the plaza, its body angled protectively toward him and standing a few steps away. The dog was old by working standards, its muzzle graying, its movements slower, but its eyes still carried a sharp, watchful loyalty. The leash was loose in the man's hand. He wasn't dressed like the others. No suit, no polished shoes. He wore a simple green shirt stretched across a solid frame and camouflage trousers faded from use. His posture was calm, almost detached, as if he were merely passing through a world he no longer belonged to. This man had seen chaos far worse than a corporate plaza. He had survived deserts, oceans, and nights filled with gunfire. What he had not prepared for was cruelty disguised as carelessness. Victor stepped sideways as he laughed, his attention fixed on the faces around him instead of the ground beneath his feet. His shoe came down hard on the dog's side. The animal cried out, a sound of pure shock and pain, its body jerking under the sudden pressure. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, but no one moved. The executives froze, unsure whether to react or pretend nothing had happened. Years of conditioning had taught them one thing above all else: never challenge Victor Hale. The dog tried to rise but collapsed again, its legs trembling. The man holding the leash felt something tear open inside his chest. His breath stopped, not from panic, but from a sudden, icy stillness that had once preceded violence in distant lands. His hand tightened, not on the leash, but into a fist at his side. Memories surged without warning, dusty roads, wounded comrades, the same dog pulling him from rubble when the world was burning. The dog's name was Ranger. He had not always been old and slow. He had once been fast as lightning, fearless, trained to detect danger before it struck. Ranger had saved lives, carried wounded soldiers, and stood guard through endless nights. When his service ended, he had not been discarded. He had come home with the men who trusted him more than any human alive. That man was Daniel Cross, a retired Navy SEAL who had given everything to a country that would never know his name. Victor finally looked down, irritation flashing across his face as if the interruption offended him more than the act itself. He lifted his foot slowly, adjusting his balance, barely acknowledging the animal beneath him. The murmurs grew louder now, unease spreading through the group. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others looked away. One or two recorded faster, sensing controversy, not realizing they were capturing a turning point. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between Ranger and the crowd. He knelt without hesitation, his hand steady as he checked the dog's breathing, his touch gentle but precise. Ranger's eyes met his, and despite the pain, his tail moved weakly, comforted by the presence that had always meant safety. Daniel felt anger rise, but he forced it down, channeling it into focus. Ranger needed calm, not fury. Security moved closer, uncertain, waiting for Victor's signal. The executives whispered, some suggesting an apology, others suggesting removal of the dog. Victor's jaw tightened. He was not used to being the one who had done wrong. His entire career had been built on never backing down, never admitting fault. In his world, damage was acceptable as long as it didn't touch him. Daniel stood slowly, meeting Victor's eyes for the first time. There was no shouting, no dramatic gesture. Just a look that carried the weight of oceans crossed and battles survived. It was the look of a man who had learned restraint not from weakness, but from discipline. The plaza seemed to shrink around them, the glass walls reflecting a confrontation no one had expected. What Victor felt in that moment was unfamiliar. It wasn't fear exactly, but a disturbance, like realizing the ground beneath you wasn't as solid as you believed. The man in front of him didn't look impressed, intimidated, or desperate. He looked steady. Unmovable. And suddenly, Victor became aware of the cameras, the silence, the dog still lying on the ground. The situation escalated not through violence, but through consequence. Someone called for help. Another executive quietly contacted legal. A few bystanders stepped closer, their loyalty shifting from power to empathy. Ranger was carefully lifted onto a jacket, improvised as a stretcher. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Daniel walked beside him as they moved toward a waiting vehicle, never once looking back. News travels fast when truth is caught on camera. Within hours, the footage spread across social media. Not the polished version Victor was used to controlling, but the raw, unfiltered moment of a man stepping on a helpless animal and showing no immediate remorse. The internet did what boardrooms never had. It judged. As the story unfolded, details emerged. The dog was a retired military K-9. The owner was a Navy SEAL. Ranger had saved lives. Daniel had received commendations he never spoke about. The narrative shifted from a minor incident to a question of character. People began asking who Victor Hale really was when no one was supposed to be watching. Daniel spent the night at the veterinary clinic, sitting on the floor beside Ranger's cage. The sterile smell of disinfectant mixed with memories of field hospitals. He rested his hand against the metal bars, feeling the slow rise and fall of Ranger's chest. He had lost friends in war, buried pieces of himself in places he could never return to. The thought of losing Ranger, after everything they had survived together, felt unbearable. But Ranger was strong. He always had been. The doctors worked carefully, explaining injuries, treatment, recovery. Daniel listened, nodded, trusted them. Trust was something he gave rarely, but when he did, it was absolute. Meanwhile, Victor sat alone in his penthouse office long after everyone else had left. The city lights glittered below, but they brought no comfort. His phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, messages from PR teams, lawyers, board members. For the first time in his life, money couldn't immediately fix the problem. The footage had touched something deeper than scandal. It had awakened a collective sense of right and wrong. Days passed. Public pressure mounted. Sponsors reconsidered. Employees whispered. Victor found himself replaying the moment over and over, not the crowd, not the cameras, but the sound the dog had made. It lingered, unwanted, persistent. He had built his life on control, yet this single act had spiraled beyond it. Change does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it comes as a reckoning. Victor issued statements, donations, apologies crafted by experts. None of them felt enough. Somewhere beneath the layers of ego and ambition, something stirred, a realization he had spent his life stepping over others without ever looking down. Ranger recovered slowly. Each small improvement felt like a victory. When he finally stood again, leaning against Daniel's leg, it was as if the world exhaled. The bond between them deepened, forged anew through vulnerability. Daniel did not seek attention or praise. He returned to his quiet routines, walking Ranger at sunrise, finding peace in simple moments. Yet the story did not fade. It transformed. Victor, pressured by conscience and circumstance, requested a private meeting. Not for cameras. Not for headlines. For the first time, he wanted to face the consequence of his actions without an audience. What happened in that meeting was not about forgiveness earned instantly or pride erased overnight. It was about accountability. About a man learning, painfully, that power without compassion leaves nothing but damage behind. Daniel listened. Ranger lay at his feet, alive, present, a reminder of what mattered. And now, before this story reaches its final breath, we ask you for something simple but meaningful. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness can still challenge cruelty, please like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and reaching hearts around the world.